Welcome to Improve Your English Writing, video number 64, which is the first part in a two-part series on tables. And in this video, we'll specifically cover tables in general, the table number and title, column titles, stub entries, and abbreviations. If you'd like to get notifications for the series, please click subscribe. If you like the video or you think others will find it useful, please click like and check out links to videos and books in the description, like a link to the companion volume here. So let's get down to talking about tables. So just a different, here is a table, and this is the actual example I have from my book, and we'll be, as I discuss tables, I'll be flipping to this one here and two other tables I created to help demonstrate the slides. So, but a table effectively presents a large amount of data. It's the best way to present a large amount of data. And what you want to do is you don't want to duplicate the table data in the running text. So you don't want to, so these values here, this is the data right in here, sort of circling it. You don't want to reproduce this data here in the text. What you want to do, though, instead, you want to discuss the conclusions reached by the data. And when you're creating a table, so let's say you want to create this table, or you want to create a table, you want to keep the two following questions in mind. One, is the purpose of the table clear? And two, is the data presented in an easy to understand way? Basically, if you answer no to either question, then you need to revise, simplify, or possibly remove the table. So if it isn't clear or easy to understand, you need to revise, simplify, or remove the table, or possibly remove the table. So those are my general comments. Let's talk about table number and placement. All tables are numbered. So some comments about the table. You number tables sequentially in the order that they appear in the running text. So the first table that appears in the running text is 1. The next table is 2. When you come back to here, see here's the table number, table 1. The next table would be table 2. So they're numbered sequentially in order of appearance. Table 1, table 2, table 3, and so on. And then you reference the number table, or the number of the table, not the page number of the running text. You don't want to see the table on page 3. The reason you don't do that is sometimes during the formatting of the book, the table may get moved. So therefore, you'd have to go through and renumber, find all those page numbers. So what you want to do is you say per table 1, and then wherever table 1 appears is great. You reference the table number, not the page number in the running text. Placement of the table. You want to insert the table as soon as possible after you reference it, after the first reference in the running text. So when you reference a table, see table 1, then you want to put that table as soon as possible in the running text. And a table that's usually a table will take up, a full page. But if you have a table that's less than 1 page, like a half page, then you can put the table at the top or the bottom of the page, separated from the running text by 2 spaces. So you want to have 2 spaces that definitely show or give it some space at the top or bottom of the page. So now let's talk about the table title. So what we're talking about is right here. So we talked about the table number. You can see that right here, table 1. This is the table number, and then table title. So let's talk about the table title that appears right here. So you want to capitalize the table title per Rule 64, which is in video 51 if you want to go reference that for more details. But here's sort of the brief, if you want to know what Rule 64 is, here's the brief summary of Rule 64. But it's best to go or be familiar with the Rule 64 in video 51. So what you do is you capitalize the first and last word. You capitalize the first and last word of the title and all words except, so these are the exceptions. You do not capitalize articles or conjunctions, so these words. You do not capitalize prepositions, except when used adjectively or adverbally. Go check out video 51 for that. But however, the Griggs Reference Manual, the Associated Press Style Book, and the APA capitalize prepositions except for short prepositions, which I believe are 3 letters or less. So basically, do not capitalize articles, prepositions, but these references do capitalize prepositions except for short prepositions. This is why it gets a little confusing, and then go see that video. And the word, you do not capitalize to in an infinitive, like nothing to see. I believe the AP does capitalize to. So that's it. So basically, you capitalize per Rule 64, and this bullet here was sort of a summary of Rule 64. And then for the title, what you want to use is you want to use a brief and unbiased description of the data. So you use crime rates of major U.S. cities. You'd use this as a title instead of, because this is brief. Someone could say could it be even shorter? I'm not too sure. And unbiased. This is definitely unbiased. Just says crime rates in major U.S. cities, because the alternative of alarming crime rate escalation in U.S. cities is definitely not short, or it could be shorter. And the words alarming and escalation show the bias of the table. So you want a brief and unbiased description of the data. Basically, let the reader reach their own conclusions about the data. A title, and sort of a tip, a title with a noun and participle, like a verb, right, is better than a noun and relative clause. What am I talking about? It's this. Basically, populations, so noun, using home delivery, so here's the participle. Populations using home delivery is better than populations that use home delivery. So here you have the noun and the relative clause. So basically, this first one is preferred over the second one. So populations using home delivery is preferred or better than populations that use home delivery. So there you go. So basically, the title should be brief, unbiased, and a noun with participle is better than a noun with a relative clause. And capitalize it. So what about columns? Well, a column title applies to one column of data. A spanner title applies to 2 or more columns of data. And the stub column is the leftmost column. So going back to here. So here we have this column here has 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a column title. It only applies to this one column of data. This spanner title, which you can see by this underline here, the spanner title applies to these 2 columns of data, so the ones with 1, 2, 3, 4, and the column with 1.2, 2.3, 3.4, and 4.5. So this spanner title would apply to these 2 columns here. So just continuing, like this spanner title here would apply to the last 2 columns. And the stub entry is a leftmost column, so this is the stub column title right here. So this is called the stub column. It's the leftmost column. So those are the various columns. You have columns, spanners, spanner titles, or column title, spanner title, and then you have a stub column title. And columns located right of the stub column contain data about the stub column. So basically, if this is the stub column, you have these entries, and then these columns contain data about the stub entry. The stub entries over here. So what about the column title? Well, the column title must be brief and use abbreviations as necessary. I do have an entire slide on abbreviations, so basically be brief and use abbreviations. All column titles within the table and similar tables, close to the table, should be parallel and consistent. So you want to use consistent titles and formatting within the table, and then similar tables and also tables close by in the text should be, basically consistent with each other. So what about capitalization of a column title? Well, you got two methods of capitalization. Method one is you only capitalize the first word and words normally capitalized, like a proper noun and the word I. So you'd only do the first word and any words normally capitalized. Method two is, method one is used by the APA in the Chicago Manual of Style recommended. So Chicago Manual of Style recommends method one, and the APA uses method one. I'm just calling it method one. They do not call it method one. And method two is capitalized per Rule 64. Now, we just covered that on the previous slide, so you can go back to that or to the video and watch that. So method two is capitalizing the title per Rule 64. And that's used by the Greg's Reference Manual, and the Chicago Manual Style allows this capitalization. So maybe the most important thing is follow the style book that you're using, and of course always be consistent. So if you have one table that's using method one, then all the tables in your document should follow method one. Don't mix and match. You need to pick a method and be consistent throughout the document. Alignment of the column title. So remember, we're just talking about titles. We're just talking about column title, spanner title, or column titles, I'm sorry. So the alignment of the titles is a spanner title is centered across the column. So here you have a spanner title, so you would center that across the columns. A column title is typically centered, not always centered, but it's typically centered. So like in this example, all these column titles are centered. They don't need to be centered, but they are typically centered. And the stub column is traditionally aligned to the left. So here you can see how this is aligned to the left here. And the title of the stub column title may be omitted when the entries are clear on their own, meaning if these column titles are going to be descriptive about what's, about the data of the stub column, but if these entries are clear on their own, you really don't need to have a title here if these entries are clear. And when column titles are all in the same horizontal row, and when at least one column is two or more lines, vertically align the columns to the lowest line. So what does that mean? So let's read it again. When the column titles are all in the same horizontal row, and at least one is two more lines, vertically align the columns to the lowest line. So coming here, what does that mean? Notice how this column and title, this is two lines, but stub column title is three. So, and all these are on the same horizontal row. So when you have titles that are all in the same horizontal row, and the titles are multi-line, you align the title to the lowest row. That's what this is saying. You vertically align the columns to the lowest line. So imagine you could actually, if you think, so this is aligned to the lowest line. This is 3, and notice how these, it's not that this column title is up one, it's not like column is in line with stub. Now imagine that to be aligned to the top, but here it's aligned to the lowest line. Hopefully this is making sense. This is 3, 2, 2, and everything is aligned to the bottom line. Stub entries, just some general comments. Entries should be brief. Use abbreviations as necessary. Once again, I have a whole slide on abbreviations. Entries within the table and similar tables should be parallel and consistent. I've covered that basically. Just like other columns, titles, the stub entry should be parallel and consistent. Capitalization of an entry. Basically, you capitalize the first word in words normally capitalized like proper nouns. So you do not apply Rule 64. You just, you only capitalize the first word in any word normally capitalized. And do not, and I'm not too sure why this highlighted the space here. Whoops. Do not end an entry or sub-entry with a period. So don't end it with a period. And the alignment of the stub columns, or the alignment of entries, is line an entry or sub-entry to the left. Notice how all these are aligned. If you sort of looked at these are sort of all centered. Notice how this stub column, everything is aligned to the left. So for stub entries, you align the entries and sub entries to the left. Continuing with sub entries, format a sub entry like an entry, but indent the width of a capital M. Notice how these are indented. So here's an entry and here's a sub entry. This is indented the width of a capital M. Now I actually have a next slide here. And I put this in here so you could tell. I just put MM, that way when I reference this, now this is a width of a capital M. Notice this, all these sub-entries here are actually indented the width of a capital M. I'll get the two M's later, but so you indent a sub-entry the width of a capital M. And the width of a capital M is generally about 3 spaces. So if you're saying, what is that? It's, you may want to make a capital M and see how many spaces it is. It probably depends on the font. But what I've always noticed is a capital M is about 3 spaces. Align any run over with the above sub-entry text. I'll show this when I get through the various bullets. And then just run over in general. So that's a sub-entry. So run over of any run over is aligned with the above sub-entry text. So what about the run over of just a normal entry? Avoid run over. I was going to say that up front. Everything looks better if there's no run over. And run over is just if something continues to the next line. When a table uses a space between entries, the run over is aligned left for an entry. When no space is used between entries and the entry has no indented sub-entries, indent the run over the width of a capital M. But if the entry has indented sub-entries, you need to indent the run over the width of 2 capital M's. Basically what happens is you need to distinguish between what is a sub-entry and what is run over. So if you don't have any sub-entries, then you can just indent 1 M. But if you have sub-entries, then you need to indent the space of 2 M's. So getting back, let's go back to this table here. So because this one has, notice this is this one right here. This is actually an entry that has a run over, Department of Health Services. But it also has these 3 sub-entries. And I know I put this here just to show the 2 M's, just so you can see it. But this Department of Health Services has run over, but it also has 3 sub-entries. So what we do is that since it has sub-entries, we're not using spaces between them. Then what we do for any run over, we indent the width of 2 capital M's. That's why I'm showing 2 capital M's so you can actually see it how it works out. And this M here is 3 spaces, so it's actually indented 6 spaces. And then these sub-entries are indented 1 capital M. You can see that here, how they're indented 1 capital M, which end up being 3 spaces. So this is how you do that if you had a run over of the entry and you actually had sub-entries. Now, of course, you're not going to have this MM line here. I'm just using that so you can physically see the capital M spacing. Okay, so but if you let's say you didn't have these sub-entries, Department of Health Services, you didn't have the Administration, Health, Resources, and other departments, then this run over would only need to be indented 3 spaces. You can see why there's these different rules of 3 and or 1M and 2Ms. It's really, you need to distinguish between what's run over and what's a sub item. So that's how you do that. So that's how you handle basically sub entries and any run over. So what about abbreviations? Well, use abbreviations likely to be understood by the audience. Define any unfamiliar abbreviations in a note. I'll talk about table notes on part 2. And in a title, enclose a unit of measure, like feet, dollar, or dollars, or something like that, or an important clarifying word in parentheses. Usually it appears on a separate line. So what happens, usually you have a title, if you had a unit of measure or clarifying word, it normally appears on a separate line, the last line in parentheses. So you could actually have maybe the title's budget $1,000,000 M. This is probably millions of dollars. The increase in percentage 2021 labor actual. These are examples of how you have a unit of measure or a important clarifying word in a title, and how that would appear. Do I have any other bullets? Oh, place any detailed information in a note. So you want to put this, and then if you had any detailed information about the title, then you would want to place that in a note. Oops. So let's get to the example. So here's how you did that. So remember, if I come back to here, the budget, the increase in percentage in the 2021 actual. So I actually made this. So here you take. So I'm saying in budget. And then normally the unit of measure in parentheses is typically occurs on a separate line. So here you'd have millions of dollars. So and then you'd have increase in percentage, 2021 labor, $1 million actual. I actually expanded that one, so it's almost like a double thing. It's millions of dollars and it's actual. So that's how you handle abbreviations or units of measure or important clarifying words in a title. So that's it for this video. If you'd like to get notifications for this series, please click subscribe. If you like the video, please hit like and check out links to books and videos in the description.